talk about the rise of the caring corporation, will you please welcome David Jones?
Well, Martin did such a great job of summarizing my presentation that the charts that follow are now redundant, unfortunately. But that's what I was going to say. I think it's great to see so many people here today, and I think it's probably a reflection of how big an issue this is for us all in the world of business today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just share some of the key findings from our report, Who Cares Wins, and also give you some of my perspective on, I think, how I see this and how I see things playing out. Fundamentally, I actually think we're entering into a phase where business is going to get better and that it's actually going to be a very good thing for the world. I mean, I'm a natural optimist anyway, but I genuinely believe it. And we believe that the most successful businesses over the next decade and more will be the ones that are the most socially responsible. And actually, when Kate and I were chatting about the amazing turnout, we said, there must be like a whole people who've turned up to say that they completely disagree. So we'll see that as the day plays out. So basically, if I can make this work, so Who Cares Wins, the rise of the caring corporation. And I think for me, we're entering into almost the third age of socially responsible business. And I'll talk to you, and they almost kind of pan out in terms of decades of the three ages of social responsibility in business. And I think you had the first age, which was what I would call the age of image. And this is probably 1990 to the year 2000. But really, it was all about how people used social responsibility to change and alter their perception and their image, rather than necessarily what they were genuinely doing to change their businesses. And I think, the phrase nice washing, the phrase greenwashing, there was quite a lot of it around. I think the next phase that we then went into is what I would call the age of advantage, in that, actually I've not moved my slide on, is where companies set about to actually use corporate social responsibility, to use socially responsible business as a competitive point of advantage. And I think Walmart is probably the best example of this. I mean, if you look at how they completely have changed not only their reality, but their reputation in the US, they've done more, they've totally re-engineered their entire supply chain, and that's had a massive effect on all of American business, because obviously people aren't going to start producing one more economically friendly and sustainable line for Walmart and then a bad one in inverted commas for everybody else. And they do it really well. And if you want to have a play on their website, I think they're as good an example as we have in the world today. It's someone who has genuinely used this for competitive advantage. And you can cite the Whole Foods, the Patagonias, the GEs, the Toyotas as companies who've been in a similar space. And I think the new and the next decade that we are now heading into is the one where if you are not a socially responsible business, it will actually damage you and you will be punished. And what I call the age of damage is that consumers today have enormous power over companies through the social media revolution, through digital technology, and they will set out to punish those companies who they do not believe live up to their standards. And I think BP is clearly, we can't have a conference about this subject without talking about them. Now, I'm not saying that the oil business is easy. It isn't. If tomorrow we had to live without oil, we couldn't drive our cars, we couldn't use any products produced by oil, the world would just completely come to a grinding halt. And a stat that I read in The Independent, which is kind of quite scary, is that this huge mess that's going on in America at the moment, the field that BP were drilling for represented 12 hours of global oil consumption. And when you kind of think about that, you realize the scale of the challenge and the problem. But that said, you don't then have to change your logo into a flower and position yourself as one of the most environmentally friendly businesses in the world. And I think this is almost the kind of, it's coming full circle. The company that pushed very hard to change their image rather than necessarily their reality is now the one that is getting the hardest time, only in the world today, but in social media as well. And the other great thing about my three words is they all end in age. So we've got the age of image, the age of advantage, and the age of damage. And it wasn't completely post-rationalized, honestly. But I think today, consumers now expect companies to give back as much as they take. And in many respects, it's just a return to business as it was in the days where the Cadburys of the world actually created whole villages and played a huge role in community and society. And I'll share with you a few stats from the report that you're going to get later on today. But it's important that companies stand for something other than profitability. 86% of people in our global survey believe with that. that businesses bear as much responsibility for driving positive social change as governments. 74% of people believe that. And I think today, you know, partly because of things like Katrina in the US, where companies and businesses were actually much better at responding than the government were, and partly because consumers today understand that they can have a great influence over companies through their spending power, there's almost more confidence in their ability to shape corporations than there is in their ability to shape governments. I've become more interested in corporations' conduct and brand image over the past few years, 64% of people saying yes to that. But it's not only consumers who say and believe that business should be more socially responsible. I think the great news is that business believes it too. 70% of the business leaders surveyed in the YouGov survey said that they believe that corporate social responsibility gives them an edge in business. Looking at the young leaders, and as Kate said, we have some of our fantastic One Young World ambassadors here today, but the percentage of them who believe that global corporations should be ethical and responsible is 83%. And the percentage of business leaders, interestingly, who actually, far from viewing this as a competitive advantage, kind of view it as a cost of doing business, is 79%. And I think the point I made earlier is that the digitally powered consumer will actually punish those companies who don't, in their eyes, live up to their expectations or operate socially responsibly. As a consumer, I have the responsibility to censor unethical companies by avoiding their products. 80% of people agree with that statement. And I think, coming back full circle, I mean, I'm not sure if you're all familiar with Leroy Stick, or basically the pseudonym, fake name for the guy behind at BP Global PR. But basically, it's somebody who set up a parody spoof Twitter handle purporting initially to be you know, the voice of at BP Global PR, but clearly nothing like that. And he says that his name is Leroy Stick. And he tells this great story, and I'll just kind of summarize it. But basically, Leroy was a big dog that used to live in his neighborhood when he was growing up. And the dog would attack him, would attack his dad, and it would attack his dog. And so one day, his dad gave him a plunger handle, and his dad carried around an axe handle. And he basically said, the next time the dog comes to attack us, you just hit the dog with the stick. And so they did this, and the dog stopped attacking them. And then soon the neighbors saw that if you carry a big stick and you hit the dog, it stops attacking you. So Leroy, actually, who's the name of the dog, actually stopped attacking. And his point that he sums up brilliantly here is the point of this story is that if someone is terrorizing your neighborhood, sometimes it's all right to grab a stick and take a swing. Social media, and in this particular case Twitter, has given average people like me the ability to use and invent all sorts of brand new sticks. And I recommend you read this blog because I think it's probably the best thing I've read in the last couple of months that summarizes the intersection between social media, consumers, and corporations. He's also very funny, and I just couldn't not share a couple of these with you. But safety is our primary concern. Well, profits, then safety. Oh, no, profits, image, then safety. But still, it's right up there. Words can't express how sorry we are, so we're just going to stop apologizing and give our investors $10 billion. But I mean, and I think one of his other points is when you have a disaster like this, actually, because people feel so kind of helpless about what they can do, actually having a bit of a laugh, you know, helps sort of people cope with it. But what's interesting is he has over 140,000 people following him on Twitter, which is about 10 times as many as the official BP handle. But I think what it's showing is how social media is dramatically changing the world for us as businesses today. And the old world was very linear. We had a brand or a company, and we had a consumer. But what we've got going on now with social media is what we call prosumers. So we say that the old world of marketing was linear, the new world of marketing is square. And that if you, prosumers are basically more engaged, more influential, more active in social media. And if you have a brand or a business or something you are doing that they believe passionately in, they will become powerful advocates for you through social media. Conversely, if you don't, as we've seen with Leroy Stick, they'll go in the opposite direction. And similarly, employees. I mean, most companies don't have employees who would actually set out to damage them with their customers, or at least not deliberately. You do have one or two examples, like I'm sure you all saw the Domino's pizza thing in the US, where a couple of employees filmed themselves doing things to pizzas that you wouldn't really want someone to do to your pizza, put it on YouTube, and within 24 hours it was on every major news program in the US and caused a huge scandal. But on the whole, most companies don't have that going on. But what you do have is the ability, if your employees really believe in you as a company, what you're doing, what you stand for, to become very powerful advocates for your business in the social media space. And I think Best Buy in the US is a terrific example of this. And today we tend to talk about social responsibility and social media a lot, but we also tend to talk about them as two separate subjects. And I guess our belief is they're not. And we think that actually the companies that are the most socially responsible will be the ones that drive the most social media, and that the very positive benefit that that will have on their businesses. So that if you put social responsibility at the heart of business strategy, you will actually really, rather than having the Leroy Sticks of the world, you will have a whole bunch of positive advocates for your business out there spreading the good word. And I think as we move into this socially media-driven world, there are three words that I believe are absolutely key behind social media, but I think they're also key behind business today. And that's transparency, authenticity, and speed. And I really think everything you do in social media, it needs to be genuine, it needs to be fast, and it needs to be transparent. And I think it's actually exactly how business needs to behave today. And interestingly, talking about the Walmart example, on their website, they've put all their targets up there, and they show you how they're doing. And there's lots of them where it says not achieved. So then, you know, they're not kind of setting out to do this wonderful sales job where they tell you they've done everything. They show you where they've not delivered, as well as showing you the percentages and what they're actually achieving. And I think it makes it very credible and real. Going back to the survey, which you'll get to take away with you, the percentage of future leaders who think that future business success is based on corporate transparency is 76%. And I think, interestingly, BP kind of hit back at Leroy Stick, and it was an interesting approach to say, look, if you know, the social media world is all about being transparent and authentic, then you should say who you are. You shouldn't be hiding behind this Leroy Stick thing, and also you need to make it clear to people that you're not actually us, which unfortunately he's very smart and clever, and they didn't handle it that well, so he then came back out basically saying he wanted to make sure that everyone knew he wasn't associated with the company that had been destroying the Gulf of Mexico for the last 50 days. And he said maybe the confusion comes from the fact that people don't know what BP stands for, and so he asked for suggestions. And actually some of those suggestions included bend over planet, bring paper towels, broken promises, blackened pelicans, and barely penitent. But I think, you know, the key learning for me, for all of us, and not just about BP, but about, you know, business in general, is all about acting before somebody acts on our behalf. And I think, you know, we can go back to Nike and the issues they had, you know, over a decade ago. And I think we all need to look at what we're doing in business and say, you know, okay, if this is the start point, how do we become more socially responsible? How do we improve what we're doing? And how do we ensure that there's nothing that we're doing in our businesses that if it suddenly ended up on the front page of a newspaper, that we would be in a pretty bad way? And I think the key to that is actually putting CSR at the core and the heart of business strategy, rather than viewing it as, you know, a marketing tactic or something that we'll put in a silo over here. I mean, I think, you know, the best businesses today are actually making this a core part of everything they do, rather than, you know, as a tactic. And I thought the Unilever announcement from Paul Polman at Davos was really great, and, you know, sets it out very clearly for the entire company. Their goal is to double the size of their revenue whilst reducing their carbon footprint. And I think it makes it absolutely clear to everybody in the company, yes, of course we want to grow, and we're setting out to grow, but we want to do it by doubling the size of the company, but actually reducing our carbon footprint. And I think it's a great way of making it clear to a business and to the world at large that you're very serious about this. And I think this quote kind of sums up one of the great things that happened in One Young World was the debate around global business. And Kate will share some of that with you later. But I think this kind of quote really summed up the mood, because, you know, we brought together nearly 1,000 brilliant young people under the age of 25, and you could have believed they'd be coming in going, look, you know, business should not be making money, it should be all about giving back. And fundamentally, this sums up what they said. No, business needs to make money. If business does not make money, people won't come and do it. But it can make money in the right way. And I think that really nails it. And not only, you know, do the brilliant young people of the future think that, I think some of the smartest global leaders actually believe that too. So if you look at the companies who've been doing well in this space, they all say the same thing. Yes, we're doing it because it's better, you know, for the planet, and we feel better about it, but we're also doing it to make money. So Camelot from GE, Eco-Imagination is not an advertising, employee, or marketing gimmick. We want to do this because it's right, but we also plan to make money. You know, Bart Beck, the global CEO of Reckitt Benckiser, and one of our clients, a terrific guy. It's important we understand that saving money and saving the environment need not be mutually exclusive. And I think that's one of the key things when you look at Walmart. You know, they say, look, reducing packaging, reducing waste, it actually makes us more profitable because we have to ship less stuff around, we have to dispose of less stuff. Or Branson talking about their efforts, we aren't doing this as a charity, we want to prove you can make money at it. So I think if we kind of believe it's what we've got to do, the next question is, you know, well, how do we do it? And we love diagrams, and I particularly love Venn diagrams, and this is my patented Venn diagram for how do you play in social responsibility. But in simple terms, if you draw one circle which is all about what is a genuine and credible role for your brand or business, and another circle which is what are the issues that consumers care about, where you need to play is where those two things come together. And I think we see a number of examples of people who are doing things that are genuine, credible roles for their brand and business, but consumers actually don't care. Or on the other side of things, and what led to the whole greenwashing, nice washing wave, is people going, oh yes, consumers care about us doing good things, so we're going to tell them we are, even if there's no genuine role or actual reality behind what you're doing. So that's kind of just to set the scene. And then I thought you'd obviously stand there going, yeah, great, so this kind of bloke from the ad agency is standing up and telling us about everything, but I ought to just share what we're trying to do and how we're trying to apply that to our business. So we've been doing 3 things in the last 12 months. And what we sat down and said about our business is we believe we're good at using creativity to change people's behavior. And that actually we have both kind of an opportunity, but you could even argue an obligation, to use the power of creativity to change people's behavior around some of the bigger issues facing the world. So the first one we did was with Kofi Annan. We did the Tick, Tick, Tick campaign for climate justice, and actually through massive use of social media as well. We got to, it's gone over 16 million now, 16 million climate allies behind the Tick, Tick, Tick campaign to basically show the world's leaders that the people of the world really care about this, even if you don't necessarily enough yet. The second thing we did is, we worked for the last 3 years with David Cameron, and we're his lead agency for 3 years and right up until his successful nomination as Prime Minister. Now, if you look at his speech from 2005, it was all about social responsibility. We believe that he is, there's probably not a more socially responsible politician or leader of a country in the world today, and I think you will see that responsibility will be one of the massive themes of this government. And so that was another thing we did, and it also gives me an opportunity to have great photos like this that my mum loves. And then the final and the really big thing was One Young World. One Young World's a not-for-profit organisation that Kate Robertson and I founded, and it was Kate's brilliant idea that I just helped kind of bring to life a bit. But basically, what we set out to do is say, if we can give the brilliant young people of the world a platform and a voice, because we're good at creating brands, we're good at getting media, then they can really affect massive positive change. And so we brought 1,000 of them together in February, and I'll share a little video with you which sort of explains what happened. That was actually you've now been brainwashed, and you'll walk out and suddenly do good things. But I think what was great about this was just to see the brilliance of the young people in the world today, B, to see how socially responsible they are as a generation, and I think the other thing has been how they've actually taken this platform and some of the amazing things that they've done. In the interest of time, I won't go into any detail, but Parker did actually become the youngest ever person at the age of 15 to ski to the geographic North Pole, which is quite impressive. Kat is over there, led a team of people to go down to Rio and actually attend the big United Nations conference and present what they believe is the missing Millennium Development Goal, which is so many problems in the world today are caused by war in the name of religion, and that's not something that is actually on the radar. And they went to present that actually interfaith dialogue needs to be one of the Millennium Development Goals, and there's a little petition you can sign to actually add your voice. A big petition, a huge petition you can sign to add your voice to that as well. But so that's kind of what I wanted to do in kicking the day off, but I thought I'd just close on a quote which I often think we overcomplicate these things. And I think our friend Leroy Stick says it really well here. The best way to get the public to respect your brand, have a respectable brand. And I think if we all do that, then not only will our brands have a better future, but I think business in general will have a better future. So I look forward to a stimulating and exciting day, and thank you all for joining us.